Good morning, everybody. You have a sub in for Mrs. Hurt today. Today is Tuesday, November 7th, so I will be taking you through your notes today. Your notes today are kind of an introduction to some of the stuff that you would use this college algebra stuff if you were to pursue calculus. Today, this stuff is coming from Chapter 2, page 157 in your book. Basically, I'm going to go ahead and do 3 examples, and then we'll go from there. So, your first question here says, simplify, but do not rationalize the denominator. So remember what rationalizing the denominator means. That means you are getting rid of the radical in the denominator, and I'm asking you not to do that today. So let's go ahead and simplify this thing. So hopefully you notice here that I've got a whole bunch of multiplication going on. So let's leave this first part alone. And again, if you need to pause this as you go, that's fine. Just make sure you do get all this down in your notes for today. So when we multiply this and this, they basically cancel. And I'm left with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and get like denominators, and I'm going to put them together. Another way you could write this is, since these are being multiplied, I can go ahead and put this x squared up in the numerator here. Okay, so my common denominator is going to be that radical 2x minus 3. So this thing needs multiplied by radical 2x minus 3 on the top and the bottom. When you do that, the radical cancels out in the numerator, and that's what I'm left with. Now I can go ahead and distribute and combine some like terms here. And that's what I'm looking at. Now the question is, can you simplify it? The answer is no. The only thing you could do is try and get rid of that radical in the denominator, and I have told you not to do that. All right, getting a little bit more complicated here. So take a look here. Looks pretty ugly. The first thing that I notice is this. If I multiply that, then basically it goes away. I also can put these two things together. And it now looks something like that. Okay, well, I notice that in the numerator, both of those terms have that 2x minus 7 in them. So I'm going to take it out. And if you remember how we take this out with the negative exponents, we're going to take that out as a GCF with that negative exponent. We did this a while back. I need you to remember, when you take things out, you are dividing it out, which means you will be subtracting your exponents. So the 2x will stay in this first term. So right now I'm looking at this right here. The 2x will stay. If I do a half minus a negative half, that ends up being plus a half, which means it's now just a 1, which looks like that. And now when I look at this part right here, if I take that negative half power out, all that I'm going to be left with is that. Okay, so now I can go ahead and simplify even further, because this is really to the first power. So I'm going to look at these two things. And when you're dividing, remember, you subtract your exponent. So if I subtract those things, negative a half minus 1, that means I have negative 1.5 of the 2x minus 7s. Negative 1.5 of those things, which means it needs to go on the bottom. and negative 1.5 is 3/2. So now my numerator is this, and my denominator is that. Again, remember, because I subtracted these two, I got negative 1.5, which is the same as negative 3.5. I'm sorry, which is the same as negative 3/2. And if it's negative, it needs to go to the bottom. Now all that's left to do is to distribute and combine my like terms. And remember, I have told you not to rationalize the denominator, so that would be your final answer. Okay, let's do one more. First thing that I notice is this. Second thing I notice is that. So let's go ahead and take care of those. Now I've got this x with this x, which is going to make x squared. And you'll notice that this starts to look just like the last one we did. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take that x squared minus 9 to the negative 1/2 power out. When we do that, if I subtract them, I basically just get 1, and that's coming from this term right here. Minus a minus will be plus, and a half plus a half will be 1. And it looks like that. So now I'm going to go ahead and reduce the same way I did before. There's a little 1 on here. So that would be 3/2, and it'll be negative, which means it needs to go to the bottom. Which means I have something that looks like this. Combine your like terms, and you are left with your final answer. Okay, folks, so that's it for today. Just giving you a little bit of an intro. Hopefully you paused and tried to understand this lesson. It will show up again, but you do not have any homework tonight. So enjoy your night off and be expecting another recording for tomorrow's notes. We are going to be starting on chapter 4 tomorrow. Thank you.